and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd, and we are glad to be back to answer all of your gardening questions. Unfortunately, this is a taped show tonight, so we can't take those phone calls. You can still send us an email for a future show. That address is byf@unl.edu. Please do tell us where you live. Let us know what's going on in your garden or your landscape. We'd also like to invite you to check out our YouTube channel. You can watch those past shows as well as over 1,000 video features that we have produced over the years. You can check out our Facebook page as well. So, Dennis.
Yes.
Excellent. We knew that what you were bringing tonight.
Okay, this is a ringneck snake. This is actually full grown. They eat nothing but ant eggs, small spiders, and very tiny worms. And they're very common right now after all the rain we got, finally, under rocks in the eastern part of the state, but they're as far west as Harlan County. And one thing about them is that you don't have to worry about them. They probably can't even bite your fingernail. And their only defense is that they're going to show the back of their tail because it's very brightly colored. Let me see if I can get one to show the back of the tail. And they're common in the fall and spring. Matter of fact, my students and I, the last weekend in April, found 200 of them for students in less than 2 hours. So where there's a lot of them, they're very common. And again, this is full grown. And just to show you real quick, this is one that hatched last September, because they all hatch in September. So you can see a juvenile and an adult. And so they don't get very big, as you can see, juvenile and adult. And they could be dark colored, they can be gray, they can be black, they can be brown. We never go by color when we're talking about snakes. Color is genetics, not species.
Except for the ring around the neck, maybe?
The ring around the neck can be yellow, orange, or red, or cream. But the base of the tail is always that warning coloration.
Very, very cool. They're so tiny.
Yeah, and they do smell pretty good. Yeah. They have a musk.
And only you would like snake musk. Oh, brother. Okay, and you know, I do hope you're not planning on sipping on that, Matt.
No, mine will not crawl away either, unless I throw it at you. So we don't have to worry about that. Today I brought in something that's going to be coming up. We have crabgrass that's already germinating, and the next one on the list that is probably the one that I dislike the most out of any weed is foxtail. So foxtail is going to be germinating usually slightly after crabgrass, and we're at that time frame where it's about, it's going to be about this size if you have a bare ground, and that's kind of what I have here in this cup. That also grows like weeds. Got pictures of the kids on there. So one thing you want to do if you do have yellow foxtail or green foxtail is come out with a product that can control it. So if you do have it up already and your pre-emergent wasn't down or it didn't work, some of the only ones that are going to work are quinclorac. Tenacity also works early when it's young, and then Pilex is another one that will work on foxtail. Only when it's young. If it gets big, it's going to be too late, and you're going to deal with the seed heads the rest of the summer.
In your socks and your dog hair and everything else.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
That's the weed I dislike the most because I can't control it once it gets too big.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, Kyle. Lovely, of course.
I bring I guess nothing as fun as snakes or anything like that.
I don't know. That's a pretty fun focus.
Some dead man's fingers, and so there's have been some rains recently, and here we have actually the two different stages of the dead man fingers fungus, Xylaria polymorpha. It's a scientific name, but when they're immature, they kind of start off kind of white, and then kind of with a brownish or darker base, and then they'll be bluntly tapered at the top, as all the mushroom books say. And then as they mature, they become a lot harder, and we get these kind of blackened just fingers that will be sticking up. Very common across really the entire of North America, at least east of the Rocky Mountains. You tend to see them, sometimes they maybe look like they're coming up out of the soil, but they are feeding on some sort of woody material. And so these were actually pulled off of a pear tree that was cut down about 4 years ago. And yeah, just one of the beautiful things that pops up, or at least things that I find beautiful.
They are very, very interesting.
Yes, they are, and they get really hard as well. And don't eat them. So I don't know why you would want to, but don't eat them.
All right, Kelly, you have a couple beautiful things.
That's right. I'll argue that mine's the most beautiful, but I don't know. Everybody else might think theirs are because it's all in the perspective. But it's the purple one here, and that's blue false indigo, or Baptisia. It is one of our natives. And this is, if you want something blooming right in May, this is an awesome plant, and this is just one of the spikes that's just starting to elongate and stretch, but they'll get, this one is minor, which is supposed to be a dwarf, a little bit smaller, but it's still, when it blooms, it's probably 2 to 3 feet tall. And then it only blooms for about a week, but it's beautiful, it's worth it. And then after that, the foliage is wonderful the whole summer. It makes a wonderful backdrop for other perennials. And you don't have to touch it. It looks wonderful for the whole summer. It's a tough plant. It tolerates heavy clay soils, drought, rabbit damage. It tolerates just about everything. And it's just Baptisia, blue false indigo, and my greenery is actually variegated Solomon seal. So that would be a plant for shade, full shade, whereas the Baptisia would be a plant for full sun.
Excellent. And we have some pretty Baptisia in our backyard farmer garden right now that's starting.
A yellow one.
A yellow one, exactly. All right, Dennis, you get the first list of questions tonight. The first one, imagine this. This is from Omaha. She wants to know, is this a male or a female ringneck snake? And she found it in the mulch at the base of a buckeye.
Right. I can't tell by looking at it. There's no, what we call sexual dimorphism in their appearance. I have to probe them to tell the sex. And so since I don't have this one, I can't probe it, so I cannot tell you the gender. But with snakes, you have to probe to get 100% knowing the gender.
And it's one or the other, and it's a really pretty snake.
Yeah, it's a male or female, and it's a full grown. That's all I can say on that.
All right, thanks, Dennis. So your next one here is live in Lincoln, and she spotted this near Fairbury. She was mushroom hunting and thinks it's a gray tree frog, but wants more from you about what is it?
It is. It's Cope's gray tree frog. It's not looking for a toadstool. So she's mushroom hunting. But this is, Hylochus isosceles, which is fairly common in the eastern part of the state and moving its way west. And they're as far west now as North Platte, and they're very common, and they're our only true tree frog.
So no real water involved short of the tap.
No, they lay their eggs in temporary waters, vernal ponds, but they can be in wooded areas pretty far from ponds, and they move during rainy nights.
Nice, excellent. Okay, Matt, you've got a lot of what is this, how do I control it tonight, starting with these first two pictures. What is this? Then I think we have another picture of the same beastie, a little piece of it, big piece.
It's growing really fast. This started probably back in February or March. Sometimes it starts really early. It's one of the earliest summer annuals, prostrate knotweed. So once you get to this stage, it's probably getting to the point to where you want to control it now, or it's going to be really hard to control if you wait another week or two. It's going to really grow fast. So a lot of the broadleaf herbicides work well on this one. Almost any mix, 2,4-D dicamba. There's other ones that contain sulfentrazone or carfentrazone that'll speed it up a little bit, and they'll get a little bit better activity on it. So I would treat sooner than later.
And if they don't want to treat, can you pre-emerge in the fall, or is this one not one that works for?
You can, but a lot of times where these are found is bare ground. I mean, I don't know if it's really thin. Pre-emergent doesn't always work the best because it's a bigger seed and it sometimes germinates through, but it will definitely help reduce the population.
Excellent. All right, your next picture, Matt, is a plant that she wants identification on, and she thinks it's some sort of parsley family sort of plant. What is this one?
I think this one's wild mustard, and that one is a summer annual as well. It's pretty common throughout Nebraska. I see it a lot in the alfalfa fields now, all those yellow flowers sticking out. So this one is another one that it's getting to the point to where it's going to seed out, and they produce a ton of seed, so you want to control it or pull it. They're pretty simple to pull.
All right, and then you have 2 pictures for this last one. What is this one? Is this a weed or is this a keeper? So she's got one showing the buds, and then I think we have one that shows this plant in flower.
So that first one looks like it's almost a dwarf. It's common groundsel is the one that I am pretty positive that it is. And this one can produce, I think, almost like 1 million seeds in one season. So you want to make sure you get rid of it as fast as you can. Also, I think it is poisonous to livestock or humans if eaten, so do not eat it. It can cause damage to the liver. So this is one that you want to get rid of and not keep because it's going to spread everywhere.
All right, thank you, Matt. Okay, so Kyle, your first one is mushrooms. What are they?
Well, I'm a fun guy, so yeah, yep, that gets old, doesn't it? So speaking of old, I think we actually have some old, dried up turkey tail mushrooms, Trametes vesicolor. This is the scientific name. Very common on a lot of our hardwoods. Occasionally you can find them on conifers as well, but they're typically pretty, they can be anywhere from a couple inches in diameter to 4, up to 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And then they often, at least when they're new, they will have kind of alternating rings that look pretty cool. And then they're also kind of fuzzy, and so if you go up, you can kind of pet it as well, if you like to pet mushrooms.
Okay. Your next one is a viewer who was trying to rejuvenate an old lilac, pruned out the suckers, found this dead 3-inch diameter branch, took it out, wonders what this smooth, dry, moldy growth is, and will it spread, or is it just doing its job?
Yeah, maybe. So based off of this picture, I'm not really able to have a good idea of what it is. It could be red rot, and so red rot is a dichotomous type species of mushroom that typically it starts off as a heart rot, and then as the branch dies, you will get kind of this flat, whitish to yellowish growth on the underside of the branch. Could also be one of our polypores. And so there are some other polypores as well that can grow fairly flat across the branch. Regardless, it is decomposing the tree. Whether or not it's decomposing the living tree or not, I would need a closer picture.
All right, and your final one here, she just found this pretty fungus in a wood pile, and she just wants to know what it is.
Yeah, so I think that this is a Cordinarius species, one of the LBMs or little brown mushrooms. In order to get a better identification, we'd need a picture of the underside and also kind of the stalk as well. But I agree, that's a very pretty mushroom.
I like the acronym for it.
We're not a very creative group. Thank you.
All right, Kelly, you have 2 pictures for this first one. This is in Blair. She has a clump birch. They were planted in 2015. Tops of all 3 trunks died to about the same point. She wants to know whether to cut it back to live wood, and who knows what happened here.
Right. There's a number of things that could have caused this. I mean, it can be root related, such as a girdling root. We don't see that very often with white birch. More often we see there's a bronze birch borer that will get in the trunk. You'll have bumps on the trunk. There's some rots, like armillaria root rot, will get those. But I think what I'll go to is that almost all of them are tied to stress. And white birch is beautiful, but white birch never has liked our really hot summers or really hot soils. And so they've always kind of been a little bit stressed, and that's why we often see bronze birch borer in them and so on. And with our temperatures getting even hotter sometimes in the extremes, I think it's going to be even more stress. So even though it's a beautiful tree, this might be one in the future that people don't plant or don't plant very much of. And as far as this tree, you can cut the dead wood out. It'll probably turn into more of a shrub. So and it may continue to decline anyway. So.
All right, thanks, Kelly. You have 3 pictures for this next one. This came to us from O'Neill, and their question is, what kind of tree was it? Why did the lower branches die? And then out of the side and out of the bottom, what's happening here?
Okay, well, I guess when you zoom in, it kind of looks like probably a willow of some sort. I'm not sure which one. Why it died back or why it's dying back, I don't know. I know that it's stress. That suckering at the bottom could be a sign. It's just when trees start to die back or get stressed, they will do water sprouts up in the upper part, or they'll do suckers around the bottom just to have some photosynthetic tissue to grow. There might be some reversion in here if this was a grafted plant, for example. Or even with reversions, you have a plant where you get a mutation and then people select that, and then over time it can revert back to the original. But it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look very healthy.
Yeah, like out, start over. All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, after a very dry fall and winter, there are still places in our state that are under those drought conditions. Some questions have come in about the possibility of reusing some of the water that we use in our everyday lives. Here to tell us more about that is Extension Associate Becky Schurman.
Gray water constitutes your water from all of your sinks throughout your home except for your kitchen, your clothes washer, your showers, and your baths. Technically, gray water in Nebraska is considered part of your wastewater. And with that, in an effort to protect human health and environmental health, we don't want to use gray water. You have to have a permit, a discharge permit from the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy, and it would have to go through some sort of treatment in order to use it. The reasons why is because gray water often has chemicals and solids and other microorganisms that can be detrimental to the health of humans and the environment. Well, the number one thing you want to do is know the moisture of your soil. And so to do that, you can use a screwdriver or a soil moisture probe, and you want to stick it either in your turf or in your garden dirt, a good 8 to 10 inches, and see how easy it is to push that down and pull it out. The harder it is to push it in and pull it out means that your soil is dry and it's in need of watering. So only water when you need to. When you have an irrigation system for your turf, or sometimes people have them for their gardens, you want to make sure that it's not on a setting that's going to just automatically run on a schedule. You want to put it to manual. And that way you can test your soil moisture first and then know if you need to turn it on or not. Good habit to get into is to have a good 2 inches of mulch around your trees and your plants and such within your landscape as well as in a vegetable garden. This really helps retain soil moisture and will help you not have to water near as often. If you're looking particularly in your landscape for good plants to plant so that you don't have to water as often, you also don't necessarily need to fertilize as often and use pest products as often, are your native plants, the ones that are known to survive in your landscape. They often have deeper roots. They also help form part of the Earth's natural filtration system. They help prevent erosion, and you won't normally have to fertilize or use pest control products on those as well. Other plants that aren't as adapt to our area and to our environment here in Nebraska tend to use more water and they need more upkeep. And so that's why we kind of deter from using those, especially in years that drought is bound to happen.
So a big part of that solution is, of course, to know what is going on in that landscape. Water only when the plants actually need it. Do try to choose plants that can take a little drier weather, and I think we all would like to do more of that. All right, Dennis, your next set of pictures. This is a Hildreth, Nebraska viewer, and she wants to know what is digging holes in the vegetable garden. This is the only picture she sent.
Yeah. So I see some small holes which look like vole holes, but that big thing looks like it's sunk in. There's no digging looking. It looks like it's sunk down, but around that sinkhole, could be voles. Now, voles don't have big cavities, but if a vole bit into an irrigation pipe, just a plastic small one, then it would cause a sinkhole. So I would look into some other reasons besides the animal or secondary to the animal.
All right, thank you, Dennis. You have two pictures on this next one, and this is these dead spots that
Yeah.
showed up and doesn't pull up. This is not the usual place for the female
Right.
dog. They used a pre-merge. They do have a mole problem. It's mostly bluegrass. She doesn't water.
Right. So moles wouldn't do that kind of thing to bluegrass, and I do see something like a vole trail near there, but the voles would not do that whatsoever. So I don't know, maybe Matt can come in on that. One thing I did think about was that if someone tried to control moles or try to control voles using something like a smoke bomb, that really doesn't work. I have seen that kill the turf because it burns the roots. So some of those toxicants can burn the roots. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't know what else it'd be besides something buried right under the grass there,
Yeah.
or sprayed Roundup or something.
Yeah, someone, yeah.
All right. Matt, you have 2 pictures for this next question, and this is bright green grass. This is in Sutton. What is this bright green grass that grows way faster than the turf around it, and how do you deal with it?
You just let it go. No, to me, it looks like Kentucky bluegrass, like a common blue it's an older type that just grows faster in the spring, more like a forage type. And the way these start, even if you plant a new lawn, sometimes you don't get all of them killed off. So there'd be one plant, and then every year after year, that circle grows bigger and bigger because it's bluegrass and it spreads by rhizomes. So it'll kind of outcompete that tall fescue, which looks like is the rest of the lawn. So besides spraying that out with glyphosate, there's really no good way to get rid of it. But if you mow it off, it's probably going to disappear and the tall fescue is going to kind of fill in, and it will be less noticeable after this spring when that flush goes. It'll kind of be growing the same as the tall fescue.
And it's kind of pretty, actually.
Yeah,
All right, you have one more picture, and this is a question about mow or don't mow in May. So this is don't mow May this year. This is an Omaha viewer and wonders, what are your thoughts on Don't Mow May initiative? Is it hard on bluegrass to let it grow for a month and then mow?
Yeah, it's probably hard on most grasses if you let them grow too tall, let's say 6-7 inches, and then you cut them off. Mm-hmm. That's just gonna promote death of the turf going right into the summer if you don't mow throughout the month of May. So the best thing you could do would be to probably at least mow it at some point in time to reduce that tall grass from getting too tall. I mean, that's what it comes down to. If you don't mow it, it's just gonna take off and grow. And I don't know how you don't mow in the month of May when grass is growing 6 inches a week in some cases.
I've seen a lot of no mow in Lincoln.
So don't fertilize would be one step,
Yeah.
and you won't have to mow as often,
Okay.
especially in May. Then fertilize in June or July.
All right. Okay, Kyle, this comes to us from the Panhandle, and it's a dwarf slow mound mugo pine in a 10-gallon container up against the house, shade southwest side. Only some tips are showing this, dead needles. The new growth is okay. It's in the Wildcat Hills in Gehring. No insects. So I know we've had some back and forth on this. What do you think this is?
Yeah, I think that this is environmental, and so it's been a lot of trees have been thirsty. I did look to see if there was any banding that's typical with Dothostroma needle blight, things like that, but really nothing like that was showing up consistently. And what the conclusion that we kind of came to, again with some multiple back and forths on this, was the heat injury from last year. And so, trees, when we see stress on trees, often it's not a stress that's occurring right now. It can easily be a stress that occurred last year, 2 years, even 5 to 10 years ago. And based off of the needles that were dying, and we kind of looked at what the temperatures in the area were when those needles would have been expanding, which would have been kind of the early June period. And a lot of temperatures in the upper 90s. And that's a little bit too warm, and so we think it just kind of burned itself.
All right, and you have 2 pictures on the next one. This is an Omaha viewer. What causes the dead branches on the burning bush? And it's, again, on one side on this one. I think you have another picture, and you can't really see much, but you can see some damage, maybe.
Yeah, so they're hard to know. There could be some cankers. Anytime we have some woody tissue like that, where there's some damage that's occurring, could be a canker. Maybe maybe a critter started to chew at it. But the other thing that we've been seeing a lot of, and I kind of feel like a broken record at this point, but a lot of plants are thirsty, and we had a really dry winter. And that the dry winter plus the drought conditions, not a good combination. And especially I would be very curious which side of that burning bush is dead as well. If it is one of the southwest sides, could easily be from those dry winter winds, causing it to dry out and leading to the injury that we have.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Kelly, this one comes to us from Yuma, Colorado.
Okay.
And this is it's a perennial garden. They're caring for it. It's a great family story. This is bouncing bat and spreads and spreads and spreads, and they want to be able to control bat or Betty without killing everything else. They're considering not watering, but what else are we going to recommend on this?
What was it growing in? Is it like a
Lots of
flower bed
perennials.
amongst a bunch of other perennials? Yeah, bouncing bat it's a naturalized wildflower. It's not a native. It was brought here, and it does spread, and that's one of the way it naturalized itself. Boy, it's going to be a tough one to control. I think it's going to be kind of like field bindweed. You just got to stay on top of it. If you don't want to use a herbicide, such as spot treating, going in there and carefully spot treating with probably glyphosate or Roundup, MAD, if you have a different suggestion. Otherwise, you're just going to have to constantly stay on top of it, not let it get any green growth on it. But you're probably going to have to you'll be dealing with it
Forever.
Yeah, there, thanks, Kim.
All right, you have two more pictures, Kelly, for this one. This is new green growth within other shrubs, and it's in a terrace area in Council Bluffs. What is this?
Okay, well, the leaves look like some type of a honeysuckle, so if it's just coming up on its own and it wasn't there naturally, some of our honeysuckles are invasive. They're on our invasive watch list. If you go to Nebraska Invasive Species and click on plants, you'll see which honeysuckles are considered invasive, like Japanese, Tatarian, Amur. I think there's another one in there. And it's one you want to get rid of and try to control either by carefully digging it out or, again, spot treating carefully with something like Roundup.
All right, thank you, Kelly. Well, our garden finally got planted last week, and we're really excited to see what happens this season. We also have plenty of containers that got off to a good start last week. So let's take a minute to hear from Terry James out in the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're babying those plants that we got in the ground last week. So we're kind of trimming some back, getting them to branch out, making them look a little bit better, getting them mulched. And we are enjoying those vegetables that have been coming up in the raised beds that we planted earlier in the year. We have some great radishes that are really tasting fantastic in our salads, along with that lettuce and some onions that we've been picking out of the raised beds. So really enjoying those fresh veggies. When we planted our containers, we made sure that we put that slow release fertilizer in, but we're going to be adding a little bit of fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, to make our containers look fantastic. And we are starting to turn our compost bins, adding a little bit of water if we don't get any rain, to make sure that we break down that waste. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
But it is still time for the lightning round. Kelly, you're up first.
Okay.
This is a viewer who says their butterfly milkweed is still not up. Would that be dead, or is it just that delayed?
Give it a little bit more time, but mine's up, but give it a little bit more time.
All right. We have a Blair viewer who says she has roses that are very, very leafy, but they don't have any buds. She wants to know how to get it to flower.
I guess it depends on what type of a rose it is. Stress it, prune it way back, stress it, see if that'll trigger blooming.
We have an Omaha viewer who planted lead plant in the fall, and it's also not up. Is that a wait and see?
Yeah, that's another one where mine in my yard is up and growing, but it's a little bit older, so wait and see. Mark the area and wait and see.
This is a Northwest Valley County viewer from Elyria. They wonder, is there a tree suggestion we might have right off the top of our heads?
An oak, plant some kind of an oak.
All right. Should the dead stems of butterfly bush and hibiscus be cut off now? Is it okay to do that right now?
Yes, cut it back to about 10 inches just in case there's some overwintering pollinators.
All right, nice job. Okay, let's see. Kyle, you are up next.
All right.
So, are you ready?
Born ready.
Okay, this is a Broken Bow viewer. They have 20 old roses, so rosarians. They're showing something that looks like a yellowish mosaic that we've talked about. Is it too early, and can they treat it?
Depends what it is. It could be rose mosaic virus. If that's the case, there's no treatment. If it's a fungal pathogen that starts off as some yellow chlorotic areas, then you probably could, but I would wait and see.
All right. This is a viewer in eastern Nebraska, they didn't tell us where, that said they had powdery mildew and slime mold in their turf last year. Should they expect both of those again?
Powdery mildew will come back. You may not be lucky enough to see slime mold again, though.
All right. We have a Blair viewer who saved their seed from tomatoes last year, and the plants are up. They're wondering, will they still be virus-free since viruses transmit in tomato seeds?
It depends what virus issues they had.
All right. This is a Falls City viewer who said had aster yellows in their coneflowers. Will it show up early in the foliage so they can get rid of them?
Typically not. You primarily see that on the flowers, not a whole lot of symptoms in the foliage.
All right. Nice job. Yours are always tough questions. On purpose.
That means I'm gonna win.
Hey, it's all right.
All right, Matt, you ready?
Yes.
This is a York viewer who wonders whether it is too late to put down weed and feed for dandelions, violets, and all those other broadleafs.
No, Weed and Feed is a post app anyway.
All right. We have a viewer who has bamboo in a neighbor's yard, and the runners are coming under the fence. How do you kill bamboo, which is a grass?
You put up a barrier so it can't grow under it or through it. That's the only way. I don't know how to kill it in grass besides glyphosate, which might kill the parent.
All right. So this is a South Sioux City viewer who wonders whether you really do need a spreader sticker if you're going to use granular herbicides, or can you just spread them?
If it's a Weed and Feed, you want it to be wet foliage when you put it down, but there's no spreader or sticker. You stick with a granular.
All right. We have a Donovan viewer who wants to know when they can overseed their fescue with buffalo grass in the hopes the buffalo will outcompete the fescue.
Now is a perfect time.
All right. What is the most drought-tolerant turf for Minden?
I'd say buffalo would be a really good drought-tolerant one, but tall fescue also can do pretty well.
All right.
In that scenario.
Excellent. Nice job. Okay, Dennis, ready?
Is a frog's butt watertight?
Sure.
Sure.
It actually isn't. It's semi-permeable membrane, but
And on that note, okay, this is an Omaha viewer who saw you on the show a couple weeks ago, wants to know where to buy porcupine wire.
on the internet, just put in Nexolite and it'll come right up.
Nexolite, all right. This is a viewer who wants to know how to discourage a skunk from living in his culvert.
That's a tough one. You pretty much have to trap and have it moved or screen off the culvert, but you have to make sure the water can go through.
All right. We have a viewer who wants to know which predator would leave the fur and the bones of a beast.
A lot of birds of prey will do that because they pick it apart.
All right. We have an Omaha viewer who wants to know if they move the animal scat of a predator to a spot near their bird feeders, will that discourage cats?
Probably not, unless the cat was chased by that predator on a regular basis. It has to learn.
Okay. This is a Vancouver, British Columbia viewer who saw your segment on voles and wants to know where to buy the 15 vole trap.
Also, you can just put multi-catch traps and Google it.
All right. Nice job. Who won? I didn't see
It was
it.
a big tie.
Yeah.
It's,
Three-way ties.
Break the
You can
trophy.
wave it
I
around.
just lost. So
Everyone but Kyle. All right. Kelly, plants of the week.
Oh, plants of the week. I should know that one. Okay. we have here, this is a sedge, the one that looks like a grass, but it's not a grass, it's a sedge, or carex, and not quite sure which one it is. Maybe spring rye, possibly. And of course, carex, like usually, there's a lot more of them coming into the landscapes now, and there's some really pretty ones, but usually it will tolerate pretty wet, moist soils. And full sun usually. There are some shade ones. The tree is a Pagoda Dogwood, and most dogwoods are blooming now with that flat cluster of flower, beautiful roundish leaves, and this one grows better it's a tree, and it does grow better in shade, or light shade, part shade.
Excellent. So nice greenish combination for late May.
Green is a color, as you always say.
All right, thanks, Kelly. All right, Dennis, your first 2 pictures this morning, or this afternoon, or this morning is when they came out on this one. That's why I said that. They saw this, and they wonder, is this fecal matter? Is this intestine? What is this? I think we have 2 pictures of that.
It looks like it could be fecal matter, and that is being squeezed out of something that's being eaten by, like, maybe a bird of prey, something like a small rabbit, and it's being picked apart. And so the fecal material in the big intestines is being squeezed out, and then that other picture is the smaller intestines.
Okay, TMI.
Well, you wanted information, I gave you information.
Let us go to your next picture, which is what left this scat.
Okay, this looks. This is a skunk, cat, and it could possibly be an opossum, one of those 3. It's black and it's rope-like and small.
All right, that was Omaha, by the way, also. And your next one is also Omaha. Found 4 piles of this, and he left us a couple pictures overnight near the foundation. So they're pretty
Well, that
big.
one's different than the first. The first one, almost because it was tubular, almost looked Canada Goose-like, but then I saw some hair in it.
It looks hairy.
Yeah, Canada Goose aren't hairy, usually. So that could be a young raccoon.
Yeah.
Or it could be, again, it could be something in the weasel family, or an opossum can do something like that as well. It's black and concentrated, so that is pointing towards opossum.
All right, excellent. So all sorts of creatures leaving gifts.
Yes, I know my scat.
Okay.
The scat stops here, right?
Yeah.
That belongs on your T-shirt. All right, Matt, you have 2 pictures on this first one. This is an Omaha viewer. She's lived here 8 years, and we have a big picture here of them coming down the bank, and then we have a close-up. They keep coming down the bank. They don't want to use chemicals, but they want something else there to hold the hill. What is this, and what would be least harmful?
Oh, yeah, common burdock. And this one will have those burrs that stick to you or your pets. Pretty big pain in the butt. They are a biennial, so the first year they probably grow the rosette, and then the next year they'll create those sticky burrs. So they'll just keep spreading and they'll keep growing. So what I would do is, if you do try and dig them out, they have a deep taproot, so you have to get pretty deep. And if you don't want to spray the whole area, you could dig them out and even just treat the taproot with glyphosate, and that will just get into the taproot and kill the plant. So you could chop the top off if you don't want to dig that deep throughout this whole landscape, and that'd be another way to do it, besides 2,4-D application, which you probably don't want in that area.
All right. You have 1 picture on this next one, and she's concerned that this is wild parsnip, which is, toxic and burns the skin.
To me, it doesn't look like wild parsnip, just the way the leaves are. It almost looks like poison hemlock. That'd be a closer one, but without looking a little closer, if you chopped it at the stem towards the lower base, it should be hollow in the middle, and that would be poison hemlock. Otherwise, it's some type of parsley or wild parsley. I really don't know the exact answer without getting a sample. But.
All right, and 1 more picture here, and this is a Fairbury viewer who wants to know how to control bindweed. They've been digging it out, and it's terrible.
Yeah, bindweed is very difficult to control, and even when you think you have it controlled, it still comes. So quinclorac is one that works very well on it, but it also works very well on a lot of your other plants, like tomatoes or anything like that. It volatilizes pretty heavily. So if there is no other plants that you're worried about killing, that would be one active ingredient that works really well on it. Otherwise, pulling it out as often as you can will deplete the root system, and thick mulch would probably suffocate a lot of those seeds.
All right, thanks, Matt. Okay, your first two pictures, Kyle, are an elkhorn viewer, and this is a buckthorn, one of the many established invasives along the river there. They're wondering, is this rust on this buckthorn, and is it the alternate host for a desirable plant?
If you're a farmer, yes. And so this is rust, and buckthorn is the alternate host for oat rust. Also known, so crown rust is what we see it on oats. Can be very damaging on oats, but otherwise, typically not really anything to worry about.
All right, and your next two pictures, this is in a community garden in Lincoln. This is chives, and they're seedlings from plants last year, and they're showing this, what can be done about it to keep it from spreading.
So you have some more rusty pustules that are coming up, and that is some more rust. And this is actually leek rust. Leek rust can also be found on chives, garlic, onions as well. Puccinia pori is the scientific name for it. Not a whole lot of great chemical control options for it, and really with most of our rust, once we get to that stage where we're seeing the orange pustules on the leaves, not too much that we can do. Big thing is going to be to avoid overcrowding. Other thing is with leek rust, it is favored by nitrogen-rich, potassium-poor soils. So if you can get your fertility right, that should be able to correct the problem a little bit.
Excellent, thanks, Kyle. All right, Kelly, this is an Omaha viewer, planted 2 trees last summer, redbud and a tulip tree, so we have a picture of each. They budded out, the leaves are doing this. What's happened here?
Well, look, when I zoomed in, it looked like a herbicide injury to me, especially on the tulip tree, because the petiole was kind of a curlicue, kind of looked like a little pig's tail almost. And then just the cupping and curling under. So, a lot of wind this year, a lot of hotter temperatures. We have to be careful with those herbicides because those are tougher conditions, more likely to volatilize or just drift.
All right, and you have 2 pictures on this next one. This is a Hastings viewer, several hostas that look poorly curling. They did have their yard treated a couple weeks ago. Does it look like drift, or is it environmental or both?
I suppose drift is possible, but the cold temperature injury will look like this as well. So I don't know the timing. We've recently had some, I don't know about recently, but it was warm for a while, and then we did have some pretty cold nights. So cold temperature injury will look like this as well. So, water it if it needs it, and it should, I think, grow out of it.
All right, thanks, Kelly. Well, it's always a problem when you hear some unwanted critters scurrying around in your home. You can take those measures once they get in. Dennis says the best way is to keep them from coming in the first place.
Today, we're going to look at how to stop rodents from getting into your house. We're going to go through exclusion methodology for mice, voles, shrews, and even field mice to stop them from getting into your home, causing diseases or causing economic damage. One of the first things we do when we look on the outside of the house, is where we'll start, is there vegetation up near the house such as this? This vegetation needs to be removed. You want a 2-foot space between the foundation and any shrubs, any bushes, any tall grass. It should be just plain cement or mulch. Nothing growing up within 2 foot of the structure. Anything within 2 foot of the structure, one, can cause insects to get into the house, but also will be hiding areas for rodents. Another thing to look at is windows and large openings. So you can see this window had been broken, and what is done is a plastic shield that is caulked has been put in its place to stop all insects and rodents. Another large opening can occur where spigots or utilities come out of the house. As you see, this has been nicely done with a shield, and it's caulked behind there, and it's well sealed. This way, no rodents or even insects can get in the home along the pipe. Something that's overlooked is cracks in the foundation. So thoroughly go over the complete foundation looking for any cracks. Any cracks that occur need to be cement it up, or you could use a cement caulk at the same time. A cement caulk that is silicone should have metal infused in it like copper wool or steel wool. If the crack is just big enough to put your finger in, like this one was, a mouse can get in. So any cracks bigger than this need to be sealed up. If you can get your finger in it, then it can get in. Another thing to look at as you're going along the foundation is put your hand here, and I can see that's solid and caulked. However, my hand can go all the way up there. A mouse can climb up and shimmy in this all the way to your attic and then get into your house. However, there's a great device that you can buy online that fits underneath here. You just get it to the right size, and it stops the mouse from going up underneath there. You just apply that in, screw it in, and it stops rodents from going up. You also need to look at the inside of the foundation, because many cracks in the foundation can be below grade that you can't find outside. These cracks, a rodent can easily burrow down next to the foundation and come right in the house. So first stuff it with a steel wool or copper wool, and then follow it up with caulk. Also, if they get into the block, they can climb up and get into the house because there's a gap here. So you need to put a metal shield on top of the opening holes in the block up next to the sill. And so this metal shield that's wedged in there will stop the rodents from coming out and getting throughout your house. So by going around the complete outside of the home and going around the inside perimeter in the lowest level, looking for any openings you can get your finger through and securing those will stop the rodents from getting into your home.
So when you're out tending that landscape, do remember some of Dennis's tips. Check around your home for those openings that you may not have known were there. After the show tonight, you should take a few minutes to check out the Backyard Farmer YouTube channel. There are plenty of great videos on controlling the furry pests, as well as those other pests. You can also watch past programs and our special features. Don't forget to subscribe so you can see all the new material we post on a weekly basis. All right, Dennis, this viewer is wondering if there's something wrong with this raccoon. This is in Ponca Hills area. Top half of his fur is gone evenly, and this is not a photoshopped strange picture.
Yeah. First I thought it was a Photoshop, or maybe someone caught it and shaved it. I mean, mange happens, but mange is not symmetric like that.
Who knows?
So I don't know. It could have been a pet raccoon that someone shaved for some reason. But who knows?
All right. We have two questions from a COZED viewer. They found two of these in the house, one in a trap, one on the bathroom floor. They want to know how to get rid of them, locate the remainder of the nest.
So this is your friend. This is a shrew. This is a short-tailed shrew, Barrelina brevicauda. They eat voles, they eat mice, and so it was probably chasing the scent of a mouse or a vole or something like that. They're pretty far and few between, so they don't multiply and you have a lot of them. I know they're smaller than a vole, but they go right for the neck and they kill at least one vole a night. So the way to get rid of them is to get rid of the mice, and the way to get rid of the mice is to invite the shrews.
All right, tame the shrew.
Yep.
All right, you have your first one here is actually an interesting one, Matt. It is they want to remove the grasses or the grass that has invaded the sedge. So is there a grass begone that won't kill the sedge? How do you do that? He can't really get it pulled.
Yeah, grass begone will kill only the grass and not the sedges.
Okay.
So that one should take care of the grass problem.
All right, you have two pictures on this one. This is also a sedge question, but this is yellow nut sedge in the vegetable garden. In Columbus, Kelly, they've had success with sedge ender around the yard, but how about in the vegetable garden?
I'd have to double check that label, and I don't think it would be approved for a garden, but it would definitely take care of it if you can spot treat them. But another way to do it would maybe be to try and use some sort of impermeable black barrier, and then just put the plants in the center hole, and you're gonna have to water there, and that'll kind of help choke out that yellow nut sedge and prevent it from thriving all summer long.
All right, thank you, Matt. All right, Kyle, you have three pictures on this first one. This is an Elkhorn viewer also. Jackmanii clematis, yellow leaves on the older growth for the past 4 years. He's done all sorts of things that may work, daconil, magnesium, neem oil. And this year, 3 plants are showing signs of it. They bloom beautifully. They're looking weak. Is this viral? What do you think?
I actually do think that that it's a magnesium deficiency. Last 4 years, it would make sense that I would, if you've done a soil test, I would be curious what the results from that were, and how the magnesium was applied. We have been seeing some magnesium deficiencies this year, especially because of the cooler, wet soils that we have, and magnesium's not as available. Doesn't tend to show up on the lower leaves, older growth. With viruses, those tend to show up more on the newer growth, and so I don't think that it's a viral issue. I really think that it's more nutritional.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Kelly, your first question comes. Oh, one more for Kyle. Sorry. So this particular one is one from Lincoln. It's a linden with a hole about 7 feet above ground, opened this spring, goes down about 18 inches, Kyle. They want to seal it off, but they're also wondering if they can be treated if it has a fungus or bacteria.
Not a whole lot that you can do right now to treat this, and personally I'm not a big fan of sealants either. What that does is that it ends up sealing in the problem, seals in the moisture. So really what I would do is I would just watch this tree and start to mentally prepare yourself that maybe there is a new tree that you could plant in the area that would maybe be just as beautiful in a few years.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Now, Kelly, it's your turn. Okay. This is an Auburn, Nebraska viewer who has lots of baby peaches set on. She wants to know, when is it best to take off the extra?
Okay, well, I like to hear that question because a lot of homeowners do not want to thin, and thinning is very important with our fruit crops. Ideally, you want to do it within usually a month of setting that fruit, or when the fruit's a little bit smaller, as a general rule. I know sometimes they'll self-prune in June, so some people like to wait until June, but the earlier you can prune them in on peaches, you want to thin them out to about 6 to 8 inches apart on the branch.
Excellent. Nice to see some peaches setting on. All right, Kelly, you have one more picture. This is an ID question from a Lincoln viewer. They found this growing in a flower bed. Should they keep it or kill it? Okay,
well, it looks like one of the viburnums, there's that maple leaf. The leaves have lobes, so it's probably one of our cranberry bush viburnums. Because the leaves are wider, I'm wondering if it's not European instead of American. And European, again, is one of those plants that in some states anyway, they're starting to consider it invasive possibly. So common name is snowball bush, but the American cranberry bush is better to plant than the European cranberry bush.
Exactly. Thanks, Kelly.